Good morning, Philippines, and good morning, world. Welcome to another day of my show, Good Vibes, and I hope this will be very good for you. And let's see. Uh, and this time I will try to share screen if I could. If what if the sun disappeared and what if the moon disappeared, right? So I'll try my best to share screen, or maybe I could violate a copyright by stopping the stream. So let's see if this will have a technical issue. I will restart the video. So thanks for your understanding. So let's see. Sorry. So better I will try to put the courtesy so that to prevent a copyright infringement. Try our best so that I can share my screen. So, para may chance ako makapag-relax pa. Yan. So yan, mag-share screen muna tayo ha. Please stand by.
Alarm clock goes off, you rise, stretch, and look out the window. Another bright, sunny morning. You're walking the dog when all of a sudden it goes dark. Poof! Like God turned off a gigantic light switch. You look up into the sky and you can see a few distant stars, but the sun is gone. The automatic streetlights come on as you rush home. What's going on? Reports on the internet and TV seem to indicate that the sun's burned out, but that couldn't happen, right? The sun couldn't suddenly extinguish, could it? What would happen to humanity if it did? How long could we survive if the sun went out? There have been a couple of times throughout history where natural phenomena has affected the sun's ability to reach and warm the earth. Notably, this happened in 1816, which became widely known as the year without a summer. On April 10th, 1815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted, spewing an estimated 9.8 cubic miles or 10 billion tons of pyroclastic ash into the atmosphere, along with several gases including carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and hydrogen chloride. Ultimately, the volcanic eruption caused severe climate abnormalities for the next few years, including limited sun and a lack of summer in the northern hemisphere in 1816. In New England, there were several large snowfalls in June. Lakes stayed iced over for the entire year in parts of Pennsylvania. Salem, Massachusetts had triple digits in early July, but on the 4th of July, reports indicate that the temperature fell into the 30s and 40s. In August, a hard freeze dominated New Hampshire and Maine. The temperature fluctuations were detrimental to crops around the world and ultimately caused famine in many regions. Famine led to disease and a cholera epidemic, killing millions. Mass migration happened as people tried to escape food shortages. The year without a summer also led to religious revivals, as apocalyptic preachers thought the world was ending and urged people to get right with God. The surface of the sun is an astonishing 5,800 degrees Kelvin, hot enough to melt or vaporize any substance known to man, including diamond or graphene. Thankfully, the Earth is roughly 93 million miles away from the sun, where the temperatures are much cooler. The sun is just far enough away from Earth to create ideal temperatures for supporting life. Scientifically, the sun wouldn't just stop burning and go out. When stars die, they expand. Most likely, the sun will expand into a red giant star and vaporize the inner planets of our solar system, including the Earth, as it collapses and dies. However, the sun evolving into a red giant star will take 7 or 8 billion years, so don't worry too much about this happening. However, let's pretend that the sun suddenly just disappeared. Citizens of the Earth actually wouldn't know what happened for a few minutes because the last of the sun's rays would still be on their way to our planet. Depending on where the Earth is in its orbit, at the speed of light, which is roughly 671 million miles an hour, light from the sun reaches the Earth in just under 8.5 minutes. So if the sun suddenly disappeared, it would be 8.5 minutes before the Earth went dark. After that, depending on where you are in the world, you would be able to see the moon and the planets in our solar system for the next several hours until the residual sunlight stopped reflecting. The sky would definitely be darker than normal because we're used to ambient light coming from the moon. Distant stars would continue to shine, and we would continue to have man-made light as electricity would continue to work for a while. The Earth would immediately begin to cool. Within about a week of the sun vanishing, Earth's average surface temperature would drop to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. After a year without sun, the temperature would be negative 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Over time, the Earth would become an ice planet. Rivers, lakes, and oceans would freeze on the surface. Depending on depth, the water underneath would continue to remain liquid for thousands of years, insulated by the surface ice. Just as much of a problem as the cold is that crops, in fact most plant life, would rapidly die. Without the sun, photosynthesis would immediately cease. The majority of plants would be dead within a few weeks. Large healthy trees could possibly survive for several decades without photosynthesis due to slow metabolism and substantial sugar stores. However, that assumes that the trees wouldn't be decimated for food or kindling. Plants are autotrophs, or primary producers in the food chain, so as they die off, herbivores would quickly follow. Then they would be followed by carnivores. Scavengers, assuming they could survive within the cold, would hang on a little longer. Another problem if the sun suddenly vanished is that it would disrupt the orbits of the heavenly bodies in our solar system. The sun's gravitational mass controls orbit. Everything, planets, passing comets, etc., would now continue their forward velocity in a straight line, heading off into space. That means for the Earth, we'd move toward distant stars at 67,000 miles per hour. Theoretically, Earth could get caught in the gravitational pull of another star and begin orbiting it. However, that's a process that would take several thousand years. Now that you have a sense of some of the underlying issues that would occur in the long run, let's return to our scenario from the beginning. You rush home from walking the dog because the sun suddenly vanishes. Within the first 24 hours, widespread panic has ensued. Social upheaval is happening and society is breaking down. Immediately after the sun winks out, the media and internet will flood with a bazillion theories as to what's happening and why. It's the end of the world. God has forsaken us. Aliens have destroyed or blocked our sun. North Korea or Russia or whichever enemy country has killed the sun. It won't take long before people begin to loot and riot. Sure, governments will attempt to implement martial law to keep control, but within a few days, everywhere will be severely affected by the cold, if not already dead from it. Warmer regions will maintain higher temperatures longer, but the residents will be even less prepared for the cold as their manner of dress and housing is often designed to maximize cooling. Extremely cold climates, such as the Arctic, will rapidly become unbearable. If the sun vanishes while it's winter in the northern hemisphere, humans and other life dying off would accelerate. As the poles of the Earth cooled, the overall atmospheric height would begin to drop as density grew. As the atmosphere drops, strong winds would begin to blow toward the equator worldwide. These winds would grow increasingly colder and disrupt the jet stream, most likely creating strong currents at ground level. The water vapor in our atmosphere would condense and it would snow in most regions of the world. Many places would be hit with blizzards. In addition to cold, wild weather, our atmosphere would begin to separate into its component gases by density. The higher density elements would drift at ground level and the lower density gases would rise, thus disrupting the amount of breathable air available. There's also the possibility that within the first 24 hours of the sun disappearing, a country would launch a nuclear weapon to retaliate against another country that they deemed responsible and start a nuclear war. Luckily, no country started a nuclear war. It's summer in the northern hemisphere, and you were living on the west coast of the US when the sun disappeared. Living near the ocean is helpful, as the water will slow the surface cooling in your region. You were smart. You spent a few hours braving the weather and other people to loot items that would help sustain your life, such as cold weather clothing, first aid supplies, fuel, and non perishable food. After that, you and your family barricaded yourselves in your house. Assuming your group can stay alive for the next few days, the danger from other humans rapidly becomes far less of a problem as the majority of the population dies off from hypothermia, starvation, hypoxia, or violence. The first to pass away will be the old, the infirm, or the very young. As society breaks down and people die, your electricity stops working. In fact, as your town used solar-powered streetlights, there's been limited light from the start of this catastrophe. No electricity means no TV, internet, and as your house had electric heating, no heat. As people struggle to keep themselves warm and resort to fire for light and heat, it's possible that large swaths of cities could end up burning as people's fires get beyond their control. While the fires won't accelerate because of hot conditions, there's too few people to try to put the fires out either. But your dwelling doesn't catch fire. And as you live slightly inland, thankfully you weren't inundated with coastal flooding due to the wild weather and tidal changes. 3 days after the sun vanishes, your group emerges out of hiding to a grotesque winter wonderland. Most of the population is dead. There's always the potential for violence. However, most of the remaining survivors are willing to work together. Your only chance for survival would be to rapidly build an artificial temperature-controlled habitat to live in. The best bet would be to burrow into the earth and live deep underground. Away from tectonic plate boundaries, geothermal temperature rises about 1 degree per 70 feet of depth in most of the world. So if you were able to create a habitat roughly a mile underground, you could live at a balmy 75.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That is, assuming you could create and maintain a society that had cooperative citizens, sustainable food sources, and breathable air systems. Also, you need good artificial light and possibly mood enhancers. Sunlight is a natural pick-me-up for humans. Other options might be to build a habitat underwater near geothermal vents. If you lived in Iceland, you'd probably have a head start using geothermal energy to heat your habitat. So, if the sun vanished, the majority of humanity would perish in under a week. If you're willing to prepare for this possibility ahead of time by building an underground domain, you might be able to sustain the human race by creating a matrix-like society of sad, pasty-skinned mole people. What's the first action you would take to survive if the sun suddenly vanished? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video called How Did a Whole Village Disappear? The Lost Colony of Roanoke Mystery. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
So what you have understand in this video? So, 'di ba? Entertaining, 'di ba?
Becomes far less of a problem as the majority of the population dies off from hypothermia, starvation, hypoxia, or violence. The first to pass away will be the old.
Gustuhan mo niya ang video, so I hope na sa susunod, may susunod pa na video, 'di ba? Na i-share ko ngayon. I hope na simple solution na lagyan ko ng courtesy tickers baba, so para hindi ako malabag sa copyright infringement. So next i-share ko, malalaman na natin ngayon. So please stand by lang po para maghintay lang po for a couple of minutes. So let's see. Mag-share na ako ng screen ngayon. Mag-share na ako ng screen ngayon, ha.
Our moon is on the move. Each year it drifts an estimated 1.5 inches further away from Earth. And in the process, Earth's rotation is actually slowing down? What if one night the moon simply disappeared? Would we miss it? A full moon is on average 14,000 times brighter than the next brightest night sky object, Venus. So without it, every night would be as dark as a new moon, and stargazing would be spectacular. But by the next morning, you'd begin to realize just how important the moon is for life on Earth. To start, between the sun, Earth's rotation, and the moon has the largest influence on Earth's tides. Without it, high and low tides would shrink by an estimated 75%. This would jeopardize the lives of many types of crabs, mussels, and sea snails that live in tidal zones, and disrupt the diets of larger animals who rely on them for food, threatening entire coastal ecosystems in the process. Within a few decades, we would start to see mass population declines in the sea and on land. One of the largest spawning events in the world occurs in the Great Barrier Reef. Each November, in the days following the light of a full moon, coral colonies across the reef, spanning an area larger than the state of New Mexico, release millions of egg and sperm sacs within nearly minutes of one another. Scientists are certain that the full moon plays a role in the timing, but exactly how remains a mystery. On land, animals like these red crabs also use lunar cues to reproduce. After living most of their lives on the mountains, millions of adult crabs migrate down to shore. And then, only during the last quarter of the moon, females release their eggs into the sea. Now, the moon may not hold as much sway over human reproduction, but without it, something we care equally about would change: the weather. Tides and tidal currents help mix cold Arctic waters with warmer waters in the tropics. This balances temperatures and stabilizes the climate worldwide. Without the moon, weather forecasts would be practically impossible. The average difference between the hottest and coldest places on Earth could grow to life-threatening extremes. But none of this compares to the biggest change that we would have coming over the next millennia. Right now, Earth tilts on an axis at 23.5 degrees, mostly due to Moon's gravity. If the Moon disappeared, Earth's axis would wobble between anywhere from 10 to 45 degrees. Some experts estimate that Jupiter could help keep Earth's tilt from reeling completely out of control. But even just an extra 10-degree tilt could wreak havoc on the climate and seasons. In the past, Earth's tilt has changed by about 1 to 2 degrees, which scientists think could have caused ice ages in the past. It's hard to know what a 10-degree or 45-degree tilt would do, but probably nothing good for most life on Earth. The moon isn't just imperative for life on Earth today. Experts believe that it might have also played a key role in the formation of life more than 3.5 billion years ago. Turns out, the moon isn't just a beacon of light in the night sky. Its existence is crucial to the delicate balancing act that makes life here possible.
So, naunawaan ba yung video na pinapanood ko sa inyo?
New moon.
So, yan, gaano ka-importante ang sun at moon? Yung importante, kasi ang between, di ba, ang sun is the important, kung sa daytime, makikita mo yung sun, and sa nighttime, makikita mo yung moon. So meron nasasabi ang moon is useful in nighttime, but hindi yung siya useful for nighttime. This is useful for daytime. Bukod pa para to light up the dark, to light up the nights. It can help us in tides. So, first, we will discuss kung napanood ko sa video na if the sun will disappear, right, di ba? After 8 minutes, automatic maging dark ang earth, di ba? Then, after a week's bilang sun, maging freeze tayo, di ba? Worldwide coldness ang earth ang mangyari, di ba? And also, food shortages and also even to living things extinction, human extinction ang cause dyan. Pero may iba mag-survive yung sa mga core, it's sa may ilalim ng tubig at sa heat core, yung earth's core, di ba? Yung mga bacteria siguro yung yan. So, yan ang kalagahan kung sa sun, di ba? Kung walang sun, wala tayo. You'll be extinct. Extinct pala. Kasi, the food shortages kasi, yung mga pinakain natin ng mga fresh vegetables, they rely on photosynthesis. The photosynthesis comes from the sun. So, yan po. Ganun din sa moon. Kung wala yung moon, di ba? Ganun, parang mas didilim na yung gabi, di ba? Delikado magmaneho sa gabi, di ba? Pero may street lights naman kasi kung wala yung street lights, kung blackout, di ba? What if kung full moon, di ba? Parang mas bright ang gabi kung may full moon, di ba? Yan ang pinakamasayang gabi ng Pinoy, di ba? Ng buong bayan yung full moon kasi para masilayan ang maliwanag na gabi. Yan ang pinaka-favorite phases of the moon ng maraming tao, full moon. Kasi kung wala yung moon, di ba? Mas didilim na yung gabi, di ba? Pero makikita mo yung stars, ibang stars, di ba? Saka bukod ba dyan, walang high tide, walang low tide ang mangyari kung walang moon. Yung mga di ba napansin niyo sa dagat, yung minsan mataas ang tubig, minsan mababa ang tubig, yan ang tawag na tides. Ang tides ay sanhi ng buwan, di ba? At kung wala yung buwan, walang high tide, walang low tide, pero mas mababa pa kaysa low tide ang mangyayari. Apart from that, kung wala yung moon, yung earth still, di ba, nag-stabilize by moon, pero wala, mag-wobble ang earth, di ba? Parang paminsan hindi mag-tilt, paminsan mag-tilt ng grabe, yan. Di ba, delikado ang mawala ang sun at mawala ang moon. So, yan ang mangyayari. Magpasalamat kayo sa araw at buwan kay sis dahil sila ang magbibigay buhay sa ating mundo. So, yan lang po ha. Yan lang po ang ating good vibes for today. So, I hope na matutunan kayo sa ating kwento sa sinishare ko na video para ma-educate kayo. So, yan lang po ang good vibes for today. Muli ako po si Joshua Saldaña at see you next time para sa good vibes. Have a blessed morning and keep safe everyone.